by the National Security Advisor of the Philippines, Eduardo Anyo, that was delivered by his colleague, highlighted the threat to the Philippines from China as the preeminent national and international security threat. I would like to share with you my own view of the threat to the Philippines at the very beginning of my presentation on the changing global threat landscape. First, Philippines faces two types of threats. One is an external threat and second is an internal threat. The preeminent internal threat to the Philippines was from terrorism and extremism. But the Philippines worked very hard to create the Bangsamoro peace process that has mitigated the threat of terrorism in a very significant way. Not only that, the armed forces of the Philippines, the military, the police, the intelligence community, they have played a very frontline role to mitigate the threat of terrorism. I myself interviewed many terrorists in the Philippines in custody, both in Manila and in Sulu, in Basilan, Cotabato City, and also in Zamboanga. Based on those debriefings, I want to share with you the threat of terrorism has diminished very significantly. In fact, although there are sporadic and isolated incidents, this is the best time to invest in Mindanao, especially in Sulu and Basilan, which is a very beautiful area of the world. So I would ask all of you to take the first mover advantage and start to invest in Mindanao. This is my plea to you. With regard to the threat from China, it is a part of the larger picture of what is happening globally. The Western civilization that dominated the world for the last 500 years is slowly, its domination is slowly decreasing. So before 500 years ago, there were other powers that dominated the world, economically, politically, diplomatically. Those powers are resurging. Whether we like it or not, it is happening. In the 1400s, right, we saw that Admiral General Cheng He from China, who was very close to the Ming Emperor, he made 7 expeditions to the west. He navigated as far as Africa, and he collected tribute wherever he went. So China's re-emergence is something we cannot stop. We may be able to stall it, but whether we like it or not, it is something that is going to happen. So let me also share with you that the world must ensure there is a peaceful rise of China. That is the greatest challenge. Because if China emerges as an aggressive power, that will create a lot of insecurity. It can even lead to war. But I want to pay a tribute to my friend and my colleague, General Eduardo Anyo, that he has decided not to go down the path of confrontation, but the path of dialogue, path of discussion. And I believe that is the most appropriate path in dealing with China. China is a hyperpower for the Philippines to deal with. If you get into war, your country will be ruined. Your security will be imperiled. And whether we like it or not, the Chinese leadership has made a resolute decision to integrate Taiwan. It will happen sooner or later. It may not happen in the next 5 years, next 10 years, next 20 years. But these are Chinese designs. And for them to expand their influence in the seas between China and the Philippines is imperative before they embark on that very ambitious venture. Let me share with you very quickly that Philippines will remain, in my view, the most important flashpoint as China's rise ceases to reach a point beyond this. So US and Europe led the unipolar world, and the unipolar world has ceased to exist and a multipolar world has emerged. There were many turning points, but the first turning point was not from a state actor against the Western world. It was from a non-state actor. Can you tell me what that non-state actor was? It was a terrorist group called Al-Qaeda. No state actor could attack New York or Washington DC, America's commercial and administrative capital. But Al-Qaeda attacked America's most iconic landmarks on September 11, 2001. It attacked America's most iconic economic landmark, the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, the North Tower, the South Tower. And another plane hit the Pentagon, America's most iconic military landmark. And the fourth plane wanted to hit the White House. But because the White House is covered with trees, they decided to hit the US Capitol because it's on a hill. A poorly trained terrorist pilot finds it very difficult to target the White House. But the Capitol Hill was possible. That is the beginning of that power shift. Another milestone in that power shift was the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It demonstrated the threat that Russia will pose to Europe and beyond. This war will continue. I've just returned back from Europe, and I can tell you that in Europe, the situation is hugely challenged by many misinformation and disinformation campaigns. You highlighted this, you alluded to this. This is happening in the Philippines, it's happening globally. What you call the fact infrastructure is being challenged by misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. So there are conspiracy communities in the Philippines. There are communities or sub-communities that specifically disseminate misinformation and disinformation. For this, every department in the Philippines should create their strategic communications capabilities, should create their information and influence operations capabilities. Let me also share with you that the most powerful players of that multipolar world, US, 10 to 20 years ahead of China. 10 to 20 years. Europe is about 10 years ahead of China. But US is a hyperpower. But after that, China, Russia, India. But we are seeing a Eurasian alliance being created by the West. This includes the Islamic pole, which is Iran. Iran sponsored Hamas attack Israel in October 7th. So we have seen the rise of many regimes: China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, Syria, Somalia, Afghanistan, Yemen. They are already fighting the West. And let me share with you that after the October 7th attack, we have seen that a number of terrorist groups have revitalized. The most recent attack that we witnessed in the Philippines, in Indonesia, in Malaysia was driven by what is happening after October 7th. So the first wave of terrorism was by Al-Qaeda, 9/11. Second wave of terrorism was by ISIS on Islamic State, 2014. June, July onwards. We are now witnessing a third wave of terrorism after the Hamas attack. And Hamas itself is not asking ISIS and Al-Qaeda to attack. But the conflict in the Middle East is galvanizing, generating finance, generating support for ISIS and Al-Qaeda and their affiliates. Let me also share with you that whether we like it or not, we are not only facing a threat from the Sunni terrorist groups, but also from the Shia groups. The most powerful Shia group is the Lebanese Hezbollah, followed by the Houthi movement in Yemen, known as Ansarullah, and another dozen other groups. So let me make some concluding remarks. Philippines, together with South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan are seriously challenged and severely challenged by China, North Korea, and Russia. The most recent partnership between Russia and North Korea presents a transfer of technology and capabilities, not only for the Russians to fight in Ukraine, but also for the North Koreans to present a challenge against the West and its allies. The West will fight back because the West is 10 to 20 years ahead of the China and the Russians and the North Koreans and the Iranians. And we have seen steadfast Western assistance to Israel. So we will also see steadfast Western assistance to Taiwan, to the Philippines. But I also want to share with you that a new Western alliance will emerge. The Five Eyes, which is the world's biggest intelligence community, will invite Japan shortly to be a member of that alliance. So the fight will be not only military, but also national security intelligence. A new Cold War is emerging. But this Cold War, ladies and gentlemen, is different from the Cold War we saw in the past. Because along with that Cold War, there will be a hot war. Ukraine is one of those flashpoints. Taiwan will be one. You must make sure Philippines doesn't become one, especially in the maritime domain, because already there's a big maritime fight going on in the Gulf, in the Middle East. Let South China Sea not be one. But I am very confident of General Anyo and his staff. He has very competent staff, the Deputy Director General Mahalo. I think that some of the best national security minds in the Philippines today staff the National Security Secretariat. They know what is important for the Philippines. So the most important thing is to avoid confrontation. Make sure your country economically prospers after 30, 40 years of war, of conflict in Mindanao. As it ends, you must make sure the peace process sustains. As it ends, you must make sure Mindanao is economically developed and people leave extremism and exclusivism and integrates to the Philippines. So let me conclude finally by paying a tribute to the Philippines national security, intelligence, military, defense communities for managing this conflict. Another country may have gone into war, but today they have not. They have exercised restraint, and that is the way forward. I thank you very much.